You once again stepped into the world of survival horror. Good luck. Alright, welcome back to Resident Evil 2, Leon, Scenario B. I teased this in the last video, and this seems to be as good a time as any to start talking about this, because I don't think this video really has many cutscenes or anything to interrupt me, so I can just kind of talk freely. In between me finishing Claire Scenario A and starting Leon Scenario B, the Netflix Resident Evil show came out, and I watched all of it, and I have very mixed opinions on it. Going into it, I didn't think... There was one thing I knew for sure. Okay, two things that I knew for sure. One was that I wasn't gonna like it. And two, Lance Reddick as Albert Wesker is maybe one of the greatest casting decisions anyone has ever made. And I wish that it wasn't being squandered on this show. Now, having seen the show, I can say I was certainly right about one of those things, which was that Lance Reddick is a fantastic Wesker. After having watched the show, I can say I only hated about 60% of the show. I actually found myself enjoying quite a bit of it. There's some really good stuff in there, and I don't know, I feel like it was an accident that some of the good stuff made it in, because a lot of it is really genuinely bad. If you didn't watch it, or if you don't remember, or if you just don't know it all, the show is kind of like, it's set in two different time periods. One is like current-ish day, where you follow Albert Wesker and his two daughters, Jade and, oh man, I don't even remember the other kid's name. Jade and... man, I don't remember. Somebody. Yeah, so it follows them in, like, New Raccoon City. And then the other half is set in, like, the far future, like maybe 10, 15 years after that. There's Jade and Billy Wesker. And the stuff set in the present-ish day, with Lance Reddick and the young Jade and Billy Weskers, that stuff, I genuinely really enjoyed most of that. There's some cringy stuff, like, there's some really, really bad dialogue in, like, the opening episode of that show that isn't really exactly indicative of the rest of the show. And, you know, I think they overuse some current day, like, pop music and stuff like that, which I don't really need to see. It's Resident Evil, there's no reason I should be hearing Billie Eilish. It's when they get to the future, or the, like, you know, farther into the future, that the show completely falls apart and loses any interest that I could have possibly had. So, yeah. There are two episodes in the show. One that takes place entirely in the, like, present. And then one that takes place entirely in the future. That future episode was the worst episode of the show. By far. Anytime that they would cut back to the future, it was easily the worst scenes in the show. There's, like, a villain guy who feels like he's like a Disney Channel original movie villain. Like, he's goofy. He talks about, like, SpongeBob at some point. It's like, there's just such weird shit in the show. the creator of the show said, like, hey, we're taking all of the games into account. We're taking, you know, the games are canon to the show, but the show won't be canon to the game. So we're going to be able to do our own thing while also, you know, encapsulating all of the games, which means all the history of all of Resident Evil, from Resident Evil 0 to Resident Evil 8, have all taken place in this show. And I was like, okay, that's cool. We'll see what kind of other, like, little Easter eggs show up in the show. And basically, besides Albert Wesker, there's a character that's named Evelyn Marcus, who I think is, I think they say is James Marcus's daughter. Besides that, there's, like, basically nothing that connects it to Resident Evil. Like, there's Lickers, there's a guy who has a chainsaw, but the story within the show doesn't match up with the games, because Umbrella is still around and never went away. And in the show, they're like, yeah, Raccoon City got blown up by a gas leak. It was a horrible accident. Umbrella wasn't involved at all. And that's like the story that people in the world believe. Whereas it's like, no, we knew, like, from Resident Evil, like, 3 onwards, that Umbrella, you know, it was nuked. Raccoon City was nuked. Resident Evil 4 says in the prologue, like, yeah, Umbrella went down. Everyone knows. They were, like, sued into oblivion. Umbrella's gone. So, when the guy was like, yeah, all the lore of the games is canon to the show, he clearly either... stuff either got cut out, or he was just literally lying. So, it's such a weird show to talk about, because I, honest to God, did enjoy a number of episodes of the show. I genuinely liked what they did with Lance Reddick as Wesker. You know, I don't want to say too much, just in case you haven't seen it. You know, just in case someone hasn't seen it, I think it's still worth checking out. It did just get canceled. They did just cancel it, like, last week. Last week for me, anyway. Which I think is unfortunate. It seemed like the Season 2 setup would have been fairly interesting. And maybe, you know, getting out of the first season, you know, you have some growing pains. Second season, you can kind of figure out what works, what didn't, what people responded to, what they didn't. But I do think that the show got unfairly kind of hated on. Mostly because every time one of these shows comes out now, you have the absolute worst people in the world, you know, saying, I'm not watching the show. I can't believe they made Resident Evil woke now. Oh, Albert Wesker's woke now? It's like, please, for the love of God, shut up. Please stop talking. You know, something's not woke just because there happens to be a black guy in it. Like, oh God, that makes me so annoyed. You can't have discussions about media anymore. Because on the one side you have people saying, there is a woman in the show, it is woke. And on the other hand, you're saying, wow, look at all these people that are scared of women, that you know, think that this show is bad because there's women, but the show is actually great. And then the reality is, like, yes, there are women and people of color in this show, but the show is also genuinely very bad. Or this movie is very bad. Or this game is very bad. It's not because of the people that are in it. It's because it is poorly made, it is poorly written, poorly directed, you know, so on and so forth. So, there's literally no way to talk about any kind of media anymore. We've, like, backed ourselves into a corner. It's why it's literally impossible to talk about Star Wars The Last Jedi. Because I don't like that movie, and I don't not like it. I don't not like it because Star Wars is woke now, or because Kathleen Kennedy should be fired, or because Rian Johnson, blah, 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 whatever. I don't like it because it wasn't interesting to me personally. And I think it's, you know, you just can't have the conversations with people. It's so annoying.
Hey, wait!
Yeah. Anyway, I'm done talking about it now. If you're interested, look, I'm a Resident Evil mega fan, and if I liked parts of it, I think that's a glowing endorsement.
Claire, you made it!
Yeah. Have you seen a little girl around here?
Yeah, you just missed her. Who is she?
I don't know. But it's too dangerous for her to stay here alone. Leon, I'll go look for her. You go and find us a way out of here.
Of course. But before I forget, here's a radio. That way we can keep in touch if something comes up.
One last thing I will say. There are some W.S. Anderson movies that I enjoyed more than the Netflix show. And obviously I like the CG shows way more than I like the Netflix show, or really any of that. So this cutscene is basically just saying, like, hey, all those areas that you were in before, like, there's brand new zombies in there now. Although I don't think we've been to many of these areas. It's just saying, your shit's fucked. There's a ton of enemies in other places now. But yeah, the CG movies are still cream of the crop. That's where it's at. And then some of the W.S. Anderson movies, like maybe the first one and the second to last one, are the two that I really enjoyed. The first one because I think it's actually kind of good. The second to last one because it's a pretty decent action movie, honestly. And Mila Jovovich rules in it. And, it's fine. Whatever. Then I would put the Netflix movie, or the Netflix show. Then I would put the rest of the W.S. Anderson movies and Welcome to Raccoon City right at the bottom. So, I don't think it's the worst thing. It's not the worst adaptation of Resident Evil we've seen. It's not even the worst adaptation of Resident Evil we've seen in the last, 3 years. That would go to Welcome to Raccoon City. So, it's not the worst. It's not the best. It's way better than I thought it was, but still not very good. So that is my glowing endorsement of the Netflix Resident Evil show. And now let's get back to talking about this video game. We're basically speedrunning this. I'm not good at speedrunning the classic games. I just feel like I don't really have the ability to do that. Because there's so much to remember, there's so much to do, so much to see. I can remember the 3D games, like the remakes. I can speedrun. I have pretty good times on most of those, on Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake. But this is about as fast as I could go, which still isn't that fast, but it's fast enough. Just put a whole bunch of stuff away. You don't need that gem. The Gemerald. Don't need the Bishop plug for a very long time. I also don't need to be carrying this Magnum around. But as I said in the last video, I won't be using the rocket launcher for this entire playthrough. In certain key areas, like boss battles, I will be switching to that Magnum. So basically, by the end of this, we're gonna have a surplus of Magnum ammo, because I won't be using it normally through the game when I would, like at a big enemy or something like that. I'll be just going psycho mode with the rocket launcher, and then just going insane using the Magnum at the end of the game. Yeah, so this is an area we've already been in, and now it's completely repopulated with zombies. Oh, sorry, I'm very sorry, but I do have to talk about the Resident Evil Netflix show again. Just real quick. I think the sign of someone being deeply embarrassed that they're writing a zombie show or movie or game is by not calling the zombies zombies. Like, oh, The Walking Dead, we call them geeks. Yeah, they're called, Zeds and something else. You know, it says to me that you're deeply embarrassed about writing a zombie show. Which you should be, but just own it. If you wanted to make a zombie show, just make a zombie show. And in the Netflix Resident Evil show, they call them Zeros. And it's like, no, man, just call them zombies. We know they're zombies. There's no copyright on the term zombie. Just say zombie. You don't have to invent a new word. To me, that's just very lame. Very, very lame. Anywhere that it's done, not just that show. Something like, okay, if you call them infected, that's fine, whatever. But just making up a new word is silly. And you shouldn't be doing it, is all that I'm going to say on the matter. But with that, this podcast about the Netflix Resident Evil show is done, and I will see you in the next video.